Hey everyone, it's Kenji. We're going to cook some pork chops with apple pan sauce. So I got a couple of pork chops here. These are bone-in loin chops, and so the loin muscle is this muscle here. It's the one that runs sort of along the back of your back. So pork chops, if you buy them center cut, they generally have a larger eye of this kind of lean meat and less of this fatty red meat around. I prefer to buy mine closer towards the blade, which is the shoulder, because it has more of that tender, more flavorful red meat and fattier meat around it. But you know, that's totally up to you which pot chops you buy, or maybe it's up to the supermarket or up to whoever. I don't know. Maybe you hire a shopper to do your shopping for you. But when I have the choice, I like to buy regular, like pretty thick cut pork chops that have quite a bit of that darker meat around the outside. All right, so I'm just seasoning these with salt and pepper. If I had a little more foresight, I would probably season these the day before and just let them sit in the fridge overnight. That'll help them stay juicier, and it'll also help them sort of season more evenly. What I am going to do is I'm going to preheat this skillet real high heat to give them a nice sear. All right. I'm going to get a little bit of oil in that pan. A couple teaspoons, maybe a tablespoon. Basically just enough to coat the bottom of the pan. And what that oil is going to do is, first of all, it's going to help prevent the pork chops from sticking to the pan. It's also going to help our pork chops cook more evenly. This was not put on correctly. What's going on here? Help the pork chops cook more even. Oh, I see what happened. Put these on backwards. Help the pork chops cook more evenly because, you know, obviously that oil is going to conduct the heat in the pan, the heat from the pan to the pork chop. And then it's also going to act as a sort of temperature indicator. So oil, you know, when it's at room temperature, it's pretty viscous. So you'll see it has like a kind of thickness to it. When it starts to get to around 350 degrees or so, that's what we call, you know, what cookbooks might describe as shimmering. When the oil starts shimmering, that's when you'll see that it becomes very liquidy, and it kind of swirls around the pan, almost like the texture of water, you know? So that would be around shimmering. And then when it's very lightly smoking, it depends on the type of oil, but most oils, especially the sort of the types of neutral oils that you would sear meats and stuff in, they'll start to lightly smoke around 425, 450 degrees or so. And so when I see this oil very lightly smoking, that's when I know it's hot enough for me to put my pork chops in and get a nice sear. What I'm using right now is rice bran oil. But anything like canola oil, vegetable oil, sunflower oil, anything like that'll work. All right, so we're gonna get our pork chops in there. I want to hear that nice sizzle when they go in. And we'll just let them sit for a moment. Meanwhile, I'm going to start on my pan sauce ingredients. So I've got a couple of apples here. You can use any sort of apple you want, you know, whatever you have. I would avoid like really mealy apples, like, you know, like Red Delicious. Who likes Red Delicious apples? But anything sort of crisp and especially tart would work really well. So like a Granny Smith would work well. Golden Delicious has like a nice balance of tartness and flavor. The pan sauce is going to be real simple. It'll be apples, some apple cider, some whole grain mustard, shallot, and a little bit of lemon juice, maybe something else, maybe some butter at the end. All right, so I'm going to cut out the core. I'll save those cores to feed to Mr. Jamon. Jamon! Jamon! Hey bud, you want some apple core? Come here. Come here. Here you go. Come on. So you can see when I'm cutting these apples, I'm pulling my knife through them, putting the tip down and pulling my knife through The reason I do that is because if you try and just chop, or you do the normal, this is a Sentoku knife, so you don't do the rock chop, but if you were to use a Western knife and do the rock chop, what ends up happening is the apple slices stick to the side, and I find that to be a little annoying, whereas if you pull the knife through, they don't. That works for potatoes, apples, whatever. That way they stay nice and tight and organized in these little bunches, so that when I go back crosswise, it's less fiddly. Makes your prep a lot faster. Alright, let's see how those pork chops are doing. Alright, they're starting to brown a bit. I'm going to flip these a few times as they cook. There's this, there's a debate over whether you should flip meat or not. When I was learning how to cook, I was always told, don't flip your meat, just flip it once. But after doing a bunch of testing and then writing a bunch of articles, doing some research, talking with people like Harold McGee, it's okay to flip meat repeatedly. In fact, it'll cook a little bit more evenly when you cook it, when you flip it repeatedly. The browning will still take place. It'll take place a little bit slower, but most of the time, by the time, when you're working on a stovetop like this or on a grill, by the time your meat is cooked through, usually you don't have trouble browning the exterior, as long as you're not working on like a really, really, really low power stovetop, and as long as your pan is preheated properly. So I typically say, flip it as often as you like. You don't have to be meticulous about flipping it frequently. You also don't have to care if you only flip it once. Flip it as many times as you want until it is the desired level of brown that you're looking for, and the internal temperature is what you're looking for. All right, shallot. If you don't have a shallot, you could use onion, you could use garlic, use scallions. Shallots tend to sort of blend into sauces, pan sauces really nicely, which is why they're so common. Pan sauces, here you go. Oh, sorry. No, don't eat the sticker. Don't eat the sticker. Here you go. And I'll grab a little bit of fresh thyme. Thyme. Who's got the thyme? Let's do a tiny bit of maple syrup, say. I like maple syrup. A little bit of apple cider. And some whole grain mustard. Alright, those are our sauce ingredients, pan sauce ingredients. Let's see where we are as far as the temperature. I'm looking for an internal temperature of around, say, 125 degrees when I pull them off, and they'll continue to rise to 135. You can go as high as, the government says 165 for pork. In the old days, pork used to have worms in it, and so you would have to cook it, parasites, so you'd have to cook them to 165 degrees so that you don't get trichinosis or whatever that thing was called. These days pork is pretty clean, so you don't have to worry about it too much. So I can see it's starting to brown a little faster than I wanted to, so I just turned down the heat just a touch. Alright, and we'll grab a little butter. And these ends of the shallots and some thyme I'm going to use to, I got some thyme stems that I had left over from another thing I was cooking. I'm going to use those thyme stems and some of the fresh thyme to baste that pork. Maybe I'll do a little bit of garlic too. Alright, let's do a quick cleanup here. Compost bowl. Give that garlic a little smash. And some butter here. Alright. Some nice color going there, huh? They're looking good. Alright, so for the last few moments of cooking, what I'm going to do is add the ends of those shallots, some thyme, garlic, and butter. And then I'm going to tilt the pan a little bit like this and just baste. That's going to help get nice even browning. Also add some of that nice garlic and shallot flavor. See where we are temperature-wise. Almost there, almost at 120. Yeah, a couple more degrees, and we're good to let this pork come out and rest. So yeah, if you pull this off at 120, it'll rise to probably 130 or so, and that'll be a sort of rare to medium rare, which is how I like my pork. If you like more pork, more well done, do it more. All right, I think we're good to rest. Got a pan with a rack. You don't need to use a rack, but it does help the pork from sort of getting soggy on the bottom. All right, and we'll pour our pan drippings over the pork for that final little sizzle. Now we're ready to make our pan sauce. Okay, so for our pan sauce, let's start with our shallots. Put the pan back over moderate heat here. Shallots, soften them gently. Apple. Now let me add a little butter because that pan looks just a little bit dry. There we go. It's looking better. So the idea with the pan sauce is that all these little brown bits are the proteins that are coming out of the meat and reducing, and as the liquid evaporates out of the pan, the proteins reduce and then they start to brown and they stick to the bottom of the pan, and so you don't want to waste that. And so you can see now the bottom of the pan is almost clean. That's because the liquid coming out of the apples and from the butter and the shallots is helping dissolve all that stuff. So all that flavor is going to go right back into the sauce, which in turn is going to make the pork taste real good. All right, so our apples are starting to soften a little. I'm gonna hit it with a dash of cider. Do a little bit of whole grain mustard. And a little bit of maple syrup. I have a recipe for something similar to this in my first book in the food lab. I'm completely just making up the ratios as I go along right here. But there's something in my book that will be at least relatively similar. I think the one in my book is actually a gastrique, which is where you put sugar in the bottom of the pan and let it caramelize a little bit, and then deglaze it with vinegar, something like apple cider vinegar, and it makes this kind of sweet and sour sauce, as opposed to this sauce, which is going to be more on the sweet side. We are going to add a little bit of lemon juice to it at the end, just for some freshness, some tartness. I'm going to add a little bit of fresh thyme to the sauce at the end. No, I'm sorry, Hamon, you cannot have this time. Up here, this is my time. This is my time up here. Okay. That's probably enough. We'll leave a little, we'll pull a little twig out for some garnish. You know, some chefs or some cooks don't like the idea of, you know, what they call non-functional garnishes, like garnishes you can't eat. I say any garnish that looks nice is performing a function. And so if your garnish looks nice, it's gonna whet your appetite. It'll make you want to eat it more. And so your garnish is being functional as long as it looks good. It's like putting flowers on the table at a restaurant, you know? It's nice. It makes you feel more in the mood to eat. All right. Interesting thing about apples is that generally the tartar they are, and this is true whether you're cooking them like this for a sauce or making them into a pie, the tartar they are, the more acidic they are, the firmer they're going to stay as they cook. That's why you know, really sweet apples tend to break down and turn mushy when you bake them in pies, whereas a tart apple like a Granny Smith is going to stay firm. And it's all because pectin, you know, the carbohydrate that holds plant cells together, it breaks down more easily in higher pH environments. So more alkaline environments, pectin will break down more easily, whereas lower pH environments, more acidic environments, breaks down less easily. That tastes pretty good. All right, finish that off with just another little knob of butter. Monte au beurre, as they say in France. You know, a pan sauce is a great time to improvise with what you've got. So you could do this with, you know, if you're making pork chop, you could do it. Pork chops pair well with fruit. So you could do this with pear, you could do this with, you know, dried cherries, something like that. You could deglaze with wine, you could deglaze with brandy, you could deglaze with liquor, you could deglaze with stock. You know, you are the boss of your pan sauce. All right, I think we're good to go. So I will plate up just one of these guys so we can get a look. Dinner's gonna be good tonight. Some little thyme up here. Okay, let's go eat. Yeah, all right. Come on. All right, here you go, bud. No pork for you. Okay, pork chops with apple pan sauce. Guys, gals, non-binary pals, I will see you next time. Bye-bye.